My name is Polly. I was sitting at the top of the stairs, just out of sight. I could hear them in the kitchen, their voices all tangled up like a bunch of knotted shoelaces. Mom and Frank, the guy who swooped into our lives like some kind of low-rent Superman, minus the cape and all the good stuff. Frank, she's my daughter, I heard Mom say, a tremble sneaking into her voice like it was trying to tiptoe around him. Look, Sheila, I didn't sign up for this, you know? It's bad enough I gotta deal with this place being a mess and you're cooking. He grumbled so loudly, I could hear his words clear as day. Now I got my own kid on the way, and I need to think about that, not this. Say it, Mom dared him, quieter now. Say what you mean, Frank. He snorted. Not this leech you got hanging on us. What is she, huh? Just a mouth to feed. Someone I got no bond with. She's just gotta go. Mom exhaled long and sorrowful, like the air itself was heavy with regret. But where would she go? I felt like my heart was a punching bag, and Frank was the kind of guy who didn't know when to stop swinging. What about her aunt? That sister of what's his name, the dead guy? Linda? But. No buts, Sheila. Geez, you're always so soft. She's family, ain't she? Let her deal with the kid. There was a quiet beep as someone pressed a number on the phone, and my ears strained to hear the rest. Yeah, hi Linda? Frank here. Yeah, you're about to do me a solid. Got a bit of a situation. Well, no, not a health thing. It's about the kid, Sheila's daughter. I squeezed my eyes shut, wishing I could just disappear into the worn carpet beneath me. Yes, Polly, Frank's voice was gruff, impatient. Look, here's the deal. She's coming to live with you. What? Nah, don't worry about it. She's practically invisible anyway. Won't even know she's there. I heard Mom's shuffling feet, like she was pacing or fidgeting, probably wringing her hands the way she did when she was torn up about something. Linda, it's Sheila. Yes, I know. We're in a tight spot. I can't, with the baby coming. The next voice, Aunt Linda's, cut through the line, sharp and cold like the knives she used to make her overcooked roasts. Fine. I'll take her. But I'm not running a charity here, Sheila. You better keep sending checks. I could almost see Mom wincing, even from where I sat. It stung, knowing the rest of my things in that duffel bag weren't half as important as those checks to Aunt Linda. Footsteps hammered towards the stairs, and I scampered up and into my room, heartbeat thundering so hard in my chest it nearly drowned out the sounds of the looming goodbye. Mom knocked softly, as if the force of her own hand could shatter me. Honey, she started, pushing the door open, her face all twisted in a way that let you know that I'm sorry was coming before a word left her lips. You're gonna stay with Aunt Linda for a bit. I stood there, my arms tight around that duffel bag, like it was the only thing I had left in the whole sorry world. Because, maybe, it was. With a glance back at the room that had been mine, I stepped out into the dim hallway, Mom trailing behind me like a shadow I wished I could shake. I didn't even turn to look at her as I walked out the front door. It was easier that way. Standing on the porch, Aunt Linda looked me up and down as I clutched my duffel bag, each second stretching out like hours. So you're here, Polly, she finally spoke, the words flat and hard. Hi, Aunt Linda. I managed to mutter, trying to keep my voice steady. Don't just stand there, bring your stuff in. But remember, I run a tight ship. You'll follow my rules under my roof, she said, turning on her heel and heading inside. I followed her into the house, which had the warmth of an ice cube. Rule 1, no shoes in the house. Park 'em by the door. And don't you dare drag in any dirt. I keep a clean home. I nodded, slipping off my sneakers and leaving them neatly by the entrance. Rule 2, lights out by 9 on school nights. I won't have any late-night gallivanting or nonsense, she continued, ticking off her rules on her fingers as she went. Okay, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Rule 3, don't talk back. Don't question me. Just do as you're told, quick and without fuss. Her house was like a museum, everything in its place and nothing out of line. The living room looked barely lived in. Plastic covers clung to the sofas, and I'd bet my last dollar they'd never been sat on. Aunt Linda caught my gaze and snapped, "Those are for protection, not for sitting. God help you if I catch a crease in them." I just nodded again, trying to take it all in. A few days in and it felt like I was walking on eggshells that were rigged to explode. I spent my time trying to be invisible, hoping that'd save me from her sharp tongue. One day, I slipped up. I spilled a bit of milk on the counter. Quick as I could, I wiped it up, but not quick enough. "What's this, a puddle?" Aunt Linda had appeared like a whisper, and her voice was like thunder. "Wasting food and making a mess." "I got it, Aunt Linda. It's clean now." I showed her the rag, trying to prove it was just a small spill. "You think sorry and a rag fixes everything? You think I have the time and money to waste on your clumsiness?" "No, I started, but she cut me off with a wave of her hand. Like I needed more problems. "Your mom sends you here like I got nothing better to do," she grumbled. "Even your own mom didn't want you, so why should I?" Her words hit me square in the chest. I stood there, jaw tight, swallowing the hurt because crying wouldn't change a thing. I knew arguing would only make it worse. The rules were clear, and Aunt Linda was the kind who never bent them. Not for anyone. "Sorry, won't happen again," was all I could get out. "You're right, it won't. Because if something like this happens again, we're gonna have a bigger problem, you hear me?" Loud and clear, I answered. My voice sounded small, even to my own ears. Dinner was a silent affair. Aunt Linda liked eating without the sound of anyone else's breathing, it seemed. I tried to chew quietly, making every move deliberate, wishing I could just disappear into my room already. Days bled into weeks and weeks into months, each as unremarkable as the last, until one afternoon. I was sitting on the carpet in my room, the one with the faded wallpaper peeling at the corners. My room at Aunt Linda's was just another box in the stack, nothing like my old one back at Mom's. With Aunt Linda at the grocery store, I grabbed the cordless phone from its cradle in the living room. My heart was racing as I punched in Mom's number, a sequence I still knew by heart. Years of dialing it for takeout or when there was a spider too big for me to handle alone. The phone rang and rang. On the fourth, she picked up. "Yeah? Mom, it's me, Polly," I blurted out before my courage could fail. There was a pause, a breath, a sigh. "What do you want?" I miss you, Don't." She cut in, her voice icy. "Don't ever call here again." The line clicked dead. I stood there, phone in hand, her words a new weight in the pit of my stomach. It wasn't just the rejection that stung, it was the finality of it. "I hope that was important." Aunt Linda's voice came from behind me like a winter's draft. I turned, startled, the phone slipping slightly from my grasp. "I just wanted to talk to her," I said, my voice failing to hide the quiver. She snatched the phone from my hand, her eyes narrow slits. "You think these calls are free?" I'm sorry, I'll pay for it," I stammered, though I had no idea how. Aunt Linda snorted. "Pay for it? With what? No, you've caused enough trouble. I'm done with it, done with you." Before I could plead, she was on the phone, barking into the receiver. "Yeah, Betty? Get a room ready. She's coming to you." I barely had time to process her words before I found myself holding a bus ticket and a hastily repacked duffel bag. She dumped me at the bus stop with a shake of her head and a good riddance that followed me onto the bus. I was on my way to Grandma's, and as the bus chugged along, the town I knew became a blur. I thought about Mom's voice, that tone I'd never heard before. I pressed my forehead against the cool window, the hum of the engine a stark contrast to the storm inside me. Grandma lived in a smaller town a couple of hours away, in a house that was as old but twice as cozy as Aunt Linda's. She was standing on the porch when I arrived, her eyebrows drawn down in concern. "You okay, Polly?" she asked as I trudged up the steps. I shook my head. Aunt Linda sent me away. Mom doesn't want to talk to me anymore. Grandma sighed, opening her arms wide. I stepped into her hug like it was a safe haven. Families can be tough, she murmured. Come on in, I'll make you some tea. As I sank down at her kitchen table, surrounded by the comforting scent of cinnamon and apples, the warmth of the room unfreezing my fingers, I started to realize something hard. That sometimes, the idea of a parent isn't what you get. And maybe, just maybe, I had to start figuring out how to deal with that. The day I settled into Grandma's house, I could tell it was a different world. The walls were lined with pictures of plants and landscapes, unlike the museums back at Aunt Linda's place. Grandma was already in the kitchen, the heart of her home, humming a tune I didn't recognize. "Gran, you need help with anything?" I called out as I dragged my bag inside. Without missing a beat in her humming, she replied, "Nah, just park yourself at the table. Gonna fix us some grub." Her voice was raspy from years of yelling over the noise of farm machinery back when she used to run the family's apple orchard. Now, the most noise she dealt with was the creaking of the porch swing and the clatter of her old pots and pans. As the weeks passed, I fell into step with her ways. Wake up before the sun, help with breakfast, then off to school. After school, help around the house, dinner, homework, and bed. No frills, no drama. One chilly afternoon, Grandma found me on the porch swing, the horizon painted orange and pink by the setting sun. "Got something to tell ya," she said, pulling the other side of the swing down with her weight. I tightened my grip on the chains of the swing. Whatever it was, Grandma wasn't one for beating around the bush. "You're not just staying here, you know. This isn't temporary." She held out some papers to me. "I've gone and made it official. You're mine now, for good." I scanned the papers. Words like custody and guardianship jumped out at me. She'd done it. "Why'd you do this, Gran?" To me, it seemed like taking on a burden more trouble than a teenage girl was worth. "'Cause you're blood, kid. More than that. You got spirit. Remember, tenderness beneath the strength." She repeated her old saying and tapped her chest. "Right here is where you've gotta be toughest." We sat quiet for a while, the swing creaking under us, the sky darkening. I let her words wrap around me like the quilts on my new bed upstairs. "Thanks, Gran," I finally said. That was all. Thanks. It sounded lame even to my own ears. "Well, don't thank me yet. You'll be pulling extra weeds tomorrow, make no mistake." Her tone was playful, but I knew she'd hold me to it. Sitting on the swing now, a few days after my sweet 16, I could see that Grandma's house wasn't just a haven. It was a starting line. And with her backing, I was finally ready to run my race. The morning sun hadn't even cracked the sky when Grandma kicked the bottom of my bed. "Rise and shine, Doc," she barked, same as she had every morning since I started med school. I groaned, my hand searching for the alarm clock. "It's not even light out, Gran." World don't wait for light. Cows don't milk themselves. Patients don't cure themselves, neither. She didn't have cows to milk, of course. It was about getting a point across, like always. Afternoons at the hospital were a blur of white walls and beeping monitors. By the time I got back, evening had settled in, and the house glowed with warm light. "How'd it go?" Grandma was at the stove, poking at something that smelled like heaven. "Good, real good." I washed my hands at the kitchen sink, watching her move around the kitchen. "Dr. Klein let me lead a minor procedure." She raised her eyebrows, a spoon still in her hand dripping some sauce. "Is that right? And how'd that feel?" "Scary as hell," I admitted. "But I did it, and it went well." "That's 'cause you're made of tough stuff." She plated the food and set it on the small kitchen table. "Earned your stripes today, huh?" "Feels like it," I agreed, diving into dinner. Afterward, we sat on the porch, me with a textbook, her with her knitting. The night was quiet, the only sound the crickets and the occasional turn of a page or click of needles. "Thinkin' of Ted?" she asked out of the blue. Ted was the first boy I brought home, a lifetime ago it seemed. Not much time for that. I didn't even glance up from my book. Relationships took time and energy I didn't have. You make time for what's important, she countered. There's more to life than just work and study. I sighed. Maybe after my residency, Gran. She nodded, knowing that was the best I could offer right then. Just remember, life's short. I smiled at her words, thinking how many times I'd heard just that. Never forget, you got more to give than just being a good doctor. Got a heart that needs sharing too. It was in this simple way that she kept my feet on the ground, reminding me there was a world outside medicine, and one day, I'd be a part of that too. We didn't talk much after that. The night wrapped around us, a blanket of peace as I pondered a future that seemed both exciting and terrifying. As the clock ticked towards tomorrow, I knew one thing for sure, whatever the future held, I'd face it head-on. Just like Grandma taught me. I should have known when Gran missed breakfast for the third day straight. It's nothing, she'd said, waving off my concern. But nothing didn't leave you pale and worn out, nothing didn't whisper lies in a voice that trembled like an old barn in a storm. The news hit like a brick. It's cancer, the doctor told me, voice flat like the EKG I wished was for someone else, anyone else. You serious? I'd asked, eyes darting from the doctor to Gran, who sat there nodding like she'd known all along. As serious as it gets, Gran said. She sat up straight, no tears, just that squared chin that always meant business. The battle was short and fierce, and through it all, she'd never let me see her scared. Until one quiet morning when she finally let go of the fight, the breath slipping from her in a soft sigh, like she was slipping into a warm bath. After, the house felt empty, like someone had scooped out the middle and left me with a shell. I walked through the funeral like someone else, shaking hands, accepting hugs, hearing murmurs of "she loved you like her own." They didn't get it, not really. It wasn't like she was my own, she was my everything. After everyone had gone, I stayed back, leaning on the cool marble, staring at the casket that was too new, too shiny. Left alone, I whispered to Gran, like I used to when it was just me and her against the world. I'll make you proud, I swear. The next morning, I found myself at the hospital, the hall sterile and smelling of disinfectant. My hands were steady, my mind clear. This was where I belonged. I might have lost Gran, but I was going to save others, keep going, just like she would have wanted. In surgery, my hands didn't shake. Gran's strength lived in me. Each stitch was a promise, a testament to her legacy, a legacy of love. Love that didn't end with last breaths or in silent funeral halls. It was the love that pushed you forward when life kicked you in the teeth. The love that made you square your shoulders and face each day knowing you were never really alone. Mom always had a flair for drama, like she could smell money from miles away and come sprinting. The doorbell rang one lazy Sunday, pulling me away from medical journals and a cup of coffee. I opened the door and there they were, like some twisted version of a family reunion photo. Mom looked at me with those hawkish eyes, and before I could even get out a hello, she was in with the ask. You've got to share, it's only fair. Half is ours by rights, she said, her hand fluttering around like a bird trying to get out of a cage. Stepdad just leaned in the doorway, arms crossed, a muscle ticking in his jaw. He had that look, the one he got when he knew Mom had a great idea. Sarah hung back, not saying a word, just scrolling on her phone. I couldn't help it, a laugh just bubbled up. Oh, you? For what, exactly? Last time I checked, you kicked me out when I was 11. Mom's eyes narrowed to slits. We put a roof over your head, fed you, clothed you. That has to be worth something. Fed? Clothed? More like rations and hand-me-downs. I crossed my arms, mirroring stepdad. I was not going to be bullied. But Gran, she said, the word almost a slur, she left you everything, and we're struggling here. Stepdad took a step forward. Listen, just give us what we deserve and we can all walk away from this peacefully. I shook my head, a mix of anger and disbelief churning in my gut. Gran didn't leave you a penny, 'cause she knew exactly what sort of people you are. Matter of fact, you remember that whole thing when I was a kid, about where I came from? Well, turns out Gran adopted me when I was a baby, so legally, I'm not even obligated to give you the time of day, let alone any inheritance. Mom went pale as a sheet, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. No. Sarah looked up then, her face confused. What's she saying, Mom? Stepdad's face transformed into a dark cloud. She's saying we're not getting a damn thing. That's right, I affirmed. You won't get anything from me. You'll regret this, Stepdad growled, a vein bulging in his neck. I stepped out, bracing myself against the frame of the door, the morning sun hot on my back. Is that a threat? I asked, my voice steelier than I felt. He squared his shoulders, but I wasn't 11 and scared anymore. It's a promise. Mom grabbed his arm, giving me a look that could curdle milk. Let's go, she hissed. I stepped back inside and closed the door, the click of the latch loud in the quiet house. Gran was gone, but she left me more than money. She left me the courage to stand up to them and the sense of worth they'd tried to take from me. Neighbors gave me the heads up with a quick call, that sort of just thought you should know ring that meant trouble. Your mom and her lot set up camp in your grandma's old house, they said, all concerned and a bit gossip hungry. That house was mine and mine alone, Grandma made sure of that. The nerve of them, thinking they could just move in and not one soul would tell me. Guys, I said, knocking on the door louder than necessary, you can't just crash here. This isn't a motel. Mom yanked the door open, a fake smile plastered on her face. Polly, we're family, she exclaimed, leaning against the doorframe like she owned the place. Stepdad loomed behind her, his look less welcoming. We're not going anywhere. This is as much ours as it is yours, he stated with that smug smirk that made my blood heat up. I clenched my fists, feeling the weight of the keys in my pocket. The house is mine, legally. You have one day to get out, or I'm calling the cops. They laughed, the kind that grates on your nerves. Yeah, sure. Call the cops on your family. That'll look great, Stepdad jeered, his arms folded across his chest. I didn't want a scene, but they left me no choice. The next morning, they were still there, lounging around as if they owned the place. That's when I made the call. When the cops rolled up, I could almost taste the sour change in the air. I stood by, arms crossed, watching through the living room window. Ma'am, sir, you need to leave the premises. Now, one officer said firmly, his hand resting near his belt. But she's my daughter, Mom tried to plead, her voice shifting to desperation. And I'm her stepdad, added Stepdad, that tick in his jaw back like a storm warning. Doesn't matter. You don't own this house and the owner wants you out, the second cop chimed in, stepping forward. They'd finally stopped laughing. I could see the realization dawning on their faces, the reality that they couldn't bulldoze their way through life anymore. I didn't budge until their car was a speck in the distance and then turned to face the empty house. It felt like taking a deep breath after being underwater too long. It was quiet, the kind of peace that comes when a storm has passed and left clear skies in its wake. Stepping into the house, the air felt different, lighter. Grandma's voice didn't echo the way it did before, now it was in my own head, words that came like a bomb, soothing over years of scars. With each step, I started to reclaim the space. The kitchen, where Grandma taught me to bake, the living room, where she healed my teenage heartaches with ice cream and tough love, and her bedroom, where she'd say prayers that I'd find my way in a world that could be cruel and unforgiving. I made coffee, the aroma filling the space, binding me to this house, this moment. Sitting at the kitchen table, I raised my cup to the new day. Justice served, and served well.